Hello. Welcome to my channel, friends. My name is Lynn, and today I'm going to show you how to make one of these. It's a little mini sticky notepad clipboard with a built-in pen loop. And I've done this live a couple of times, but I've never actually recorded a tutorial for it, and several folks have asked me for a tutorial, so here it is. Now the pens, these short little pens that I got are kind of convenient. They're 4 inches and they have a clip on the end so that with this pen loop, it doesn't have to be so perfectly form fitted. So you can see as I try to put other pens in, some might be too big, the pencil was too small, but pens that have that little clip, you can just hang off of the pen loop. But just so that you know, that might be something that you need to customize depending on what pen you want to that pen loop to hold. And these Post-its I got on, or they're not actually Post-it brand, but they're sticky note pads that measure 3 by 3. This bulldog clip is really darling. It's 3/4 of an inch wide, and I just love that brass look to it. So love that. This is the pen. I got it off of Amazon as well, and you can get those in bulk for not all that expensive. This is kind of a really nice project for maybe stocking stuffers, or if you sell at craft fairs. I kind of feel like these would be fun craft fair sellers as well. I've got some pattern papers, and I even stamped and colored an image that I am going to put on the front of my sticky notepad holder here. Now I'm gonna start with medium weight chipboard. That's what this is, but I have done this with lightweight chipboard as well, and I think that works fine too. So use whatever you have in your stash. I am going to wrap my chipboard with some craft cardstock, and sometimes if it's black, I tend to be okay with not wrapping the chipboard. But anytime I have this sort of natural craft color chipboard, I always feel like it's unfinished if I don't wrap it. So this measures 3.5 tall by 3 3/4 wide. So 3.5 tall, 3 3/4 wide. This bit of craft cardstock is 3.5 tall by 8.5 wide, and we'll trim that down to fit when we get to that point. So, you will need, I did show it earlier, a bit of craft cardstock if you are going to wrap your chipboard like I will be. And that just needs to be cut to 1 inch taller and 1 inch wider. So I've got that piece cut to 4.5 tall by 4 3/4 wide. And what I like to do is I'm going to treat this just like if I were making a wrapped mini album cover. I'm putting double-sided dry adhesive as close to the edge of this chipboard as possible, and then a squiggle of liquid adhesive. I happen to be using Barely Art glue, and I'm gonna center this as best I can, but it really doesn't matter because there should be, about 1/2 inch on all 4 sides, which is plenty to wrap around. Now, I don't score lines where this folds, these glue tabs fold over. And the reason for that is because the thickness of your chipboard, it's actually going to take up some space. So if you score 2 lines that are exactly the width and the height of your chipboard, it's not ever really going to fold exactly on those lines because it takes a little bit of paper to make its way around the thickness of your chipboard. So what I always like to do is just fold this over to fit. I put a line of liquid adhesive right up against the chipboard. I learned that trick from a bookbinder. His video is DOS bookbinding here on YouTube. And that helps to sort of soften that edge a little bit. And then what I do is I'm running my bone folder against my chipboard, and I'm gradually increasing the angle until it feels like I can just fold it straight down so that it makes contact with the chipboard. You can see there, when I mitered my corners, I did cut away from the corner about, 1/16 and 1/8 of an inch. That way, when all of these 4 glue tabs are folded over, you'll still have a little bit of overlap, but not as much as if we didn't miter those corners. And we didn't take away too much, because if you cut right to the corner of your chipboard, some of your chipboard will be exposed. You don't have to worry about that if you leave at least a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch. And by running your bone folder against the chipboard and just easing it gradually over, it has the same effect as scoring would, meaning it's softening your cardstock so that you don't have any cracked paper. And then I take my bone folder and I just tapped on those corners to take away some of that sharpness. That's another trick that I learned from DOS bookbinding as well. So I picked up a lot of my habits when it comes to applying adhesive and album making from bookbinders, like people who create handmade books and do like Coptic stitch binding and make their own hardbound covers and all of that, and those habits have just started to just creep into my everyday card making as well. So with this piece of craft cardstock, this started at 3.5 tall by 8.5. I've put that first score line at 3 3/4. It's going to be basically the same size as our chipboard. And then the next 2 score lines are 1/4 of an inch away from one another. And you want to do a mountain, valley, mountain fold. And so your first score line is at 3 3/4. Next score line is at 4, and then the one after is at 4 1/4. Now, if you have a fatter pen, then you'll want to score larger than 1/4 of an inch. 1/4 of an inch is good for the little mini golf pencil that I showed earlier. So this pen loop would be a little bit smaller than the one that's holding my silver pens. Now, for this last section, what you want is from your last score line, you want 3.5. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put that last score line to the 3.5 inch mark, and then I'm going to trim off the rest. And that way, when your pen loop folds down, your cover is going to end up being more or less flush, because remember our back cover piece was 3.5 or 3 3/4 of an inch, and our pen loop is going to take up 1/4 of an inch. So the rest of that cover is the other remaining 3.5 inches. So now we can decorate, and I want to do all of the decorating on this piece first while everything is nice and flat. Now, one thing to note is that I'm going to end up covering most all of this craft color cardstock, but there is a little bit of it that's still visible where the pen loop is. And because this is just paper after all, I'm going to reinforce the pen loop with some Tyvek. I use Tyvek wristbands all the time in my album making. I buy them, I've purchased them once and in like 3 different colors, and I have yet to use up a full pack because you don't really need a lot of this. Tyvek is a man-made material that is resistant to tearing, and that's what makes it really good for reinforcing anything that has to fold often. I will also use it to reinforce anything that I cut through. So both of those things are true with the pen loop. And plus, depending on whether you're making the pen loop so custom fitted that it will hold the pen just from the being perfectly sized. And even if you're using the pens like I am that have the clip, this little bit of cardstock here is going to have some wear and tear. So what I'm going to do is fold this so that those 2/4 inch sections are on top of one another. I'm going to use my T-square ruler so that I can draw a perfectly orthogonal line, a 90-degree line across it doesn't have to be centered, but just within your Tyvek, because you want everything to be reinforced there. So I want to reinforce that bit of cardstock that juts out to be our pen loop. Now this pen, it's a snug fit, but the pencil, it fits perfectly, and it has just enough tension to hold because it's perfectly fitted for those little mini pencils. And so if you need something wider, then instead of those 2/4 inch score lines, you would just increase that to even up to 3/8 of an inch. That's what I did on the 2 examples that I showed earlier, just so that you can see the size difference. Now on the 1/4 inch section that is closest to the back, that's going to get glued down. So I'm putting double-sided adhesive wherever, on the sections or areas where I know they're going to get glued down, just so that we can make sure that we're keeping the orientation that we want to be facing our pattern papers, because I'm using pattern papers that are directional. This one is non-directional, but then I ended up flipping it over because when I went to go apply my adhesive, it looked prettier on the back side. And also, the side that has the little cherry blossom trees, the background to that pattern looks like it's a little bit more white, as opposed to on the other side it's a little bit more of a light pink. And because that Tyvek is visible, I figure having something that's white is going to be make that a little bit less obvious. I mean, you'll still see it, but it'll tie in a little bit better. Now, as I go to position this down, I want to make sure that I'm just kissing the fold, but I'm not going over that fold at all, because this needs to fold down for that first 1/4 inch section to actually adhere down flat on top of it. If you place that first piece of pattern paper such that it covers any of the score line, it's gonna create some bulk there, and you're not gonna be able to fold that section of the craft cardstock completely flat, or at least it'll be uneven or a little bumpy. So just have it meet right up to the score line. Same with this, although it's not quite as critical with this one. You can get maybe a little bit more snug, but you still don't want to cover the score line because that cover piece needs to bend as well. It just doesn't need to necessarily fold down completely flat. So you can see I'm not trimming quite as much away from the overhang as I did on that back piece. Now I am going to decorate the front cover as well at this point, because again, while everything is flat, it's a lot easier to burnish. And if you watch my videos, you know me, I'm pretty aggressive with my burnishing. So I like to keep everything nice and flat until the very end, like basically have everything decorated until the end. Now I'm gonna do a couple layers of pattern paper, and then I am going to have this image in the center. I kind of wish almost now, looking back, that I had maybe colored up a smaller image, because I ended up having to trim quite a lot away from this because I want to still be able to see the pattern paper behind this. And mostly because I used that specific pattern paper for the color inspiration as I was coloring up this image. So it really only makes sense if you can also see enough of the pattern paper behind it for those colors to coordinate and make sense. Now, I don't want to eat up any more of that border because it is already pretty tight fit. So all I'm going to do is take one of the markers from that I used to color this and run it against the edge. And you can see that puts just the thinnest edging on that piece, but it's enough of a border so that it frames it and it really sets it apart against the pattern paper behind it, especially since the pattern paper behind it has a white background and I colored on top of white, so there's not anything that really clearly defines that edge of the piece that I colored. So now I can adhere all of that down, and just like before, I like to put my double-sided adhesive as close to the edge as possible. And you might notice, anytime I'm making mini albums or practical projects like ones that you actually use, I've gotten into this habit just from mini album making, because if you have adhesive all the way to the edge, then it's less likely that this piece of pattern paper is going to lift on you, or that something will snag at those outer edges and start to lift. If something starts to lift, it's likely going to start from those outside edges, because that's where, maybe there might be something that catches that little lip, or that's the outside edges are the ones that are exposed to air as well. So if air gets in there and starts to dry things out, things would start to lift from those outer edges. Now, if you get adhesive all the way to the edge, like I have here, and you burnish it really well, then it creates a really nice seal and hopefully makes for your project, makes for, a longer lasting project that is hopefully a little bit more durable and will stand up to any wear and tear, especially if it's a practical item like this one that's going to be used. Maybe, taken in and out of a pocket or a book bag or a purse, or even just, opened and closed a lot. So the last thing to do is just glue that 1/4 inch strip down. Make sure you pop your pen loop out so that you don't glue that out. Don't glue that down, I mean. And so you can see this is a perfect snug fit for our little mini golf pencil, but it's a little bit too small for my little pen here. I have to put a lot of pressure in order to get that down in there. So you don't necessarily want to use too thick of a pencil, but that's why I kind of like using pens that have the clip, because you can make it a little bit roomier than you need, and it'll just clip onto that little pen loop instead of using the friction of that exact sizing to hold the pen or the pencil in place. Now, last step. So I am going to now put the bulldog clip, attach this to the back of our little sticky notepad holder here. And I'm going to use some E6000. I am just taking a little bit of scrap. This is, again, just a bit of leftover Tyvek. I actually colored this bit of Tyvek. I just took an alcohol marker and colored it to match some other project I was working on. But I'm going to I'm going to clip the Tyvek so that if there's any of this E6000 that sort of oozes out a little bit, I don't want to accidentally glue my bulldog clip closed. So you can't just use paper, because it'll stick to paper, the E6000. What you want is to use anything that is where you can basically peel away the glue. So like an adhesive liner, just some scrap liner, if you use return address labels and you have that sheet left over, that would be good too. This is just it's going to be a little bit of insurance so that our glue doesn't accidentally glue this bulldog clip shut. But you can see that's how it's going to be positioned. And right at the opening, it kind of curves upward a little bit. And so what I'm going to try to do is E6000, it's got a little bit of thickness to it, but it's not as thick as, say, like a 3D glue gel. It can be very watery, and so I'm gonna put a bead of it on here and try to keep it a nice bead, because the part that's actually going to make contact with my with that back cover, it's more on the end that's towards where the clip is, as opposed to the open end. So I'm going to put my little Tyvek in here. Again, that's just in case some glue actually accidentally oozes out. And then I will position this. Now, don't push down. You want to set this more on the edge of where the clip is, so that, again, it's a little bit raised at the point where it opens. And I will hold this up. I know I didn't change my focus, but you'll see here in a second how I've positioned this. And don't push too hard. Like I said, you want to keep it raised, and see how there's still that bead of glue under the opening there. We want to keep a little bit of that sort of thickness of the E6000, and then just leave it like that to dry. While it takes a little while, so don't be in a rush. Give it a couple hours, and until then you can sort of nudge it a little bit. I'm trying to get it centered along 3.5 inches, would be 1.5 inches on either sides. And once you have it in position, just let it hang out, let it dry and set up, and then you can come back to it, and you'll be done. So I'm gonna clear everything off, and I'll show you the finished little sticky notepad holder. Okay, so I have left it to dry for a little while, and now I can open this and remove that little Tyvek. And you can see here, like, it dries super crystal clear. It's held its dimension, and it's pretty firm. You can press, because this is a clip, it does need to be firmly stuck down so that you can push the clip to open and close the bulldog clips. And I put in this cute coordinating sticky notepad and loaded it with a pencil, and then I'm done. So I love how this one turned out. Super duper cute. And of course I have my other two also using the not too shabby papers from the box of the month, and I use some card front panels for the fronts. Now I had to cut down my card front panels quite a bit just to use that little portion of it, but it's just another fun way to decorate your covers. Thanks so much for checking out my video today, and a big thank you to all of my channel members. I really appreciate your support, and your membership definitely helps to keep my channel going, and I'm hoping to do more and more member-only live streams and member-only content. So thank you so much, and thank you in advance also if you ever use any of my affiliate links, because I do earn a small commission whenever you do, and I greatly appreciate that as well. Until next time, friends, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.